I solemnly swear that I am up to no good.
Messrs. Mooney, Wormtail, Padfoot and Prongs are proud to present the Marauder's Map.
If you succeed tonight, more than one innocent life may be spared.
Expecto Patronum!
Hey everyone, welcome to Hogwarts, a podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Hogwarts, a podcast. We're covering Chapter 16, Professor Trelawney's Prediction. So, this is going to be a big episode. We've had a lot of inflammatory Trelawney talk so far. We have Elizabeth back with us.
Hi, guys.
Thank you for that. So this will be an interesting kind of episode. We will get into Professor Trelawney a lot. But first, we kind of get introduced with exams and the idea of the exams.
My favorite part of the year.
I just want to mention the casual nature to which they speak of a giant squid swimming in the lake. That would freak me out. I don't care how familiar I am with the squid or how nice it seems to be. That would freak me out. Anyway, so we get introduced to what the wizarding exams truly are.
I like the abbreviations for them. I think they're funny.
I like one. I'm not super thrilled with the other. The OWLs I like a lot. Ordinary Wizarding Levels. That sounds appropriate. That sounds pretty correct. And it happens to have a nice, fun, wizard-themed abbreviation. That's great. The second one bothers me a little bit, just because it seems like you're reaching a bit. It seems like you're really trying to hit an acronym here. When you get the nastily exhausting wizarding tests.
Also known as newts.
Newts.
I like how it's aptly named like that. I hate standardized tests. I wish the standardized tests had that accurate description. I feel like the kids would enjoy that as well. They already make up their own abbreviations for it, so.
I'm sure they do. These are interesting tests. It comes after the 5th and 7th years. Mm-hmm. And so that newt level is kind of like an extra certification, if you will.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's kind of interesting. So you have the twins. You have Fred and George preparing for the OWLs.
Which I think as far as even Fred and George were spotted studying.
It does happen on occasion. Even they felt the pressure. I'm sure Molly sent them a harsh reminder of don't screw this up. And you have Percy preparing for the newts, which is now this is a big deal for Percy.
Right, he wants to get into the Ministry of Magic. Yeah,
and so he needs good marks on every newt level course that he's taking. Mm-hmm. So it's a big deal, as Elizabeth mentioned, even the twins are studying for it. So it's big. We get a glimpse as to Hermione's exam schedule, which Harry and Ron have laid off the schedule concerns until they see the exam schedule, and they can't help themselves but be like, how are you going to do that?
Well, because she's got 2 exams at 9 and then 2 at 1, all on Monday. That's so much. And impossible.
What we're glimpsed at here is these seem to be practical exams, not written, which I feel is interesting. We have Malfoy getting over the sadness of losing the Quidditch final by poking fun at Hagrid and poking fun at Buckbeak. The trio decide we got to be there for the appeal. We need to help.
Mm-hmm. I mean, because Hagrid's their friend, and he needs the emotional support.
Except Harry can't.
Technically.
Technically, they
not
all...
supposed to.
Technically, all 3 can't. But particularly Harry shouldn't be leaving the grounds at night or in the evening. So he has Ron and Hermione... he has Hermione go fetch his cloak, which is still at the bottom of the passageway.
Which, I don't know about you, but it would freak me out to have that important of a possession just lingering about the school.
As Julie and I have said many a time, things you shouldn't just casually, leave.
I know, and I understand him not wanting to go near it just because if Snape sees, he's going to automatically getting him into serious trouble. But it's like, you have other friends. He could have gotten Hermione to get it from her ages ago.
To be fair, they haven't been on the best terms.
Yeah, but, or he could have gotten Ron to do it.
Maybe he doesn't trust Ron to go get it.
I don't know. I mean, maybe he thinks... I mean, Snape was there... Like, if Snape saw Ron going near it, maybe he'd
be a little bit more suspicious, yeah.
But Hermione could.
Sure. So, the final exams. Mm-hmm. We need to talk about the final exams. Because we get a glimpse into each class's final exam, and they're really interesting. For all being practical, you get... Can we talk about the Transfiguration exam and the mistakes that some of the kids made?
Yeah, they're supposed to turn a teapot into a tortoise, and Hermione irritated everyone because she's like, oh no, my tortoise looked like a turtle, but everyone else was saying how, mine still had a spout for a tail, or it was breathing steam, or it had a willow patterned shell. My question is, was that the only thing that they had to do for this exam? That one task?
But it seems like all of the exams seemingly only had one task.
Yeah, which is why I was like, I don't know how I feel about these exams. I mean, the care of magical creatures, they just had to keep the flabberworms alive, because clearly Hagrid's heart is not in it right now, and understandably so. Flitwick tests them on the cheering charms. Potions makes me laugh, because he made them do the confusing concoction, which Harry was confused by and potentially got a 0 on. Astronomy, they had up at midnight on the tallest tower. History magic, he said he scribbled down stuff about medieval witch hunts. And then defense against the dark arts was the whole, obstacle course kind of a thing. But it just seems to me like it's just one task for each exam to cover everything from the year, and that just seems strange to me that they didn't have to do more magic than just the one thing.
I have some thoughts on those. So, I agree with you. Hagrid seems to have, since the Buckbeak incident at the beginning of the year, has seemed to shut it down as far as trying things.
He went from one extreme to the other.
Yeah, the Transfiguration thing makes sense. I don't know the intricacies of Transfiguration. Maybe it's combining different elements of Transfiguration that you learn throughout the year and putting it together for this.
But
I don't know.
Charms. I mean, charms. Clearly, they learned more than one charm all year.
Absolutely. That just happens to be the most recent one. Cheering charms, I want to get to for a second, though. Mm-hmm. If we could pause on cheering charms. Mm-hmm. The description that we get of them is literally you make the individual happy.
Almost
giddy, cheerful,
giddy if you
cheering charms, cheerful.
Do it, yeah.
So, we've talked at length on this podcast about therapy for individuals, and for whatever depression, anxiety, stress, what have you. Do you think cheering charms are a form of temporary medication, if you will, for lack of a better term, but in the wizarding world?
No.
What's it for, then?
I think...
Just to make someone randomly happy?
I'm immediately thinking about Umbrella Academy, the TV show. If you're not familiar with the show, it's a family of, siblings who have some type of superpower, and they're very dysfunctional. It's fantastic. It's on Netflix. One of the characters has the power to rumor people and make them do whatever she says. So, for example, it could be like, I heard a rumor that you were happy, and then suddenly you are happy. And that's where my brain's going with these cheering charms. If it's a forced happiness, but a fake happiness that is similar to putting a jinx on someone.
You're thinking of it more of a nefarious kind of. That's interesting. That's a weird... Not a weird take, but it's an interesting take.
It seems to me as a...
Wow, we took two very different viewpoints on this.
I could see it as being yeah, sure, it makes somebody happy, but I could just see if someone was depressed and then given a cheering charm, that's just it's not solving it. It's not getting to the root of the problem. It's just like putting a Band-Aid on something
Sure.
and being like, okay, move on with your life.
Sure, but I'm not saying it's like a replacement for therapy. I'm saying it's like, so if you have like real problems that require more than just like talking it through.
Right.
And like, instead of going to a psychologist or a counselor,
Right.
you're going to a psychiatrist for like an actual like medication type thing, which doesn't fix the issue either, but it
Right,
temporarily
no.
like,
I think I just
You know what I'm
get
saying?
more of a like, if I'm depressed and I'm told have a cheering charm, to me that comes across like those memes that are like, you don't need medication for depression, you need to go outside, exercise, eat better. Like, yes, those are things that could help it, but they're not.
I'm viewing it as a way to take the edge off. Like, if you're having real problems,
That makes me think then more of like drugs.
that's what I said.
But
Like, you're going
but
to
I'm thinking like illegal drugs, not
No.
necessarily like prescription drugs.
What do you think? Like antidepressants, what do you think those are? Is
Right.
something to take an edge off.
Right.
I'm not saying that's the answer by any means, or that they're good or that they're bad or whatever. That's not my purview. But I just get the feeling like it could be used as a form of treatment for people that are not doing well.
I just see it as more of a like, you know, if I'm depressed and I'm given a cheering charm and now I'm happy, I know it's a false happiness. I know it comes
You won't know
from
that
the
until it
charm.
wears off.
But I feel like you do. Because when they were studying those cheering charms, I mean, Harry said how, who was it? One of them overdid it. And yeah, Ron, Harry slightly overdid his out of nerves. Ron, who partnered him, ended up in fits of hysterical laughter, had to be led away to a quiet room for an hour before he was ready to perform the charm himself. I'm just imagining it being similar to like a jinx. Like, say like the full body bind, right? Like, you are paralyzed there and you're aware of
You're
it.
taking much more nefarious.
Yeah, you're aware of it, and you know, like, I can't do anything about it until it's done or removed from me.
Here's the difference between those, I think. Mm-hmm. The jinx you just mentioned is a specific thing to disable you. Mm-hmm. The cheering charm, if done well and done appropriately, like the full body bind, if you do that well and do that appropriately, the person is disabled.
Right.
If you do the cheering charm well, the person is just happy. If you screw it up, yes, they become disabled from their hysterical nature, but
I guess
in its intended state.
I just have problems, I think, with forcing happiness on somebody. Because to me that seems just as nefarious as forcing pain on somebody.
I think we're talking to the same...
Let them feel what they want to feel.
We're talking to the same point as what's the purpose here? Mm-hmm. What's the intended purpose? I have a hard time believing Flitwick is teaching something in a third-year level class for a nefarious result.
Well, I mean, any charm, any of this stuff. I mean, remember when I was talking about the polyjuice potion? Like,
that's not a
can
third-year level thing, though.
I know. Well, yeah, that's true. But like in general, like it seems a lot of magic, if in the wrong hands, you know, can be used very dangerously against them. And I could see the perks of having a cheering charm, but I'm also thinking again about Umbrella Academy. That character uses it on a little girl, is like, stop crying, cheer up. Like, that kind of thing to me would be like, you are taking away that humans, like, ability to feel what they want to feel and control of themselves. It seems weird to me.
Don't get me wrong, I get what you're saying.
Uh-huh.
I do. The problem with that is you could, like you said, you could apply that to any type of magic across the board. You're forcing something to choose somebody.
That's what I'm wondering, like, where this comes, well, like you said, where does this come into play? I could see it being used with mental health.
Like, then you're just disbarring the whole, like, transfiguration is an awful thing.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's,
and that's a whole subject, is you're turning something into something else against its will.
I took it in a darker way than you did.
Yes, you did. I don't know. You guys let us know. What do you think of cheering charms? Give us some feedback. That was a more intense discussion than I thought we were going to have on cheering charms. Let us know what you guys think. I do want to get to some of the other classes.
The Defense Against the Dark Arts.
The Defense Against the Dark
is
Arts one is, yes. That's interesting. Here's my thing on the class. I think it's the most effective final. Because to your point at the start of this...
It covers more than one little thing.
It covers more than one thing that you have clearly learned throughout the year.
Right.
I'll give Lupin that. Here's the thing with Lupin's lessons. And I get that this is the nature of Defense Against the Dark Arts. To be fair, that is literally what it is. But Lupin's lessons have a real fine line of it can go well, and it usually does, to Lupin's credit. But these are lessons in classes and a final that can go very badly. Like, Ron let, I believe, a hinky punk get him, like, waist deep in, like, some quicksand type thing.
Yeah.
Like, we learn through Lupin's lessons that, like, red caps kill people. Hinky punks kill people. That's what they do. That's their nature. And you're literally intentionally putting kids in a dangerous situation.
Which is Hogwarts' motto.
I get it. And I get that Lupin's lessons all go well and everything's happy and everything's fine. But they can go very wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that's also why he does one at a time, so he could really be focusing. Like, I could see him just strolling along on the outside of this obstacle course and checking. And
he puts him in a cabinet with a boggart.
No, it's an old, an old trunk. Climb into an old trunk and battle with it. But yeah, I mean, he's still on hand.
It just gets me with Lupin about, like, his lessons. They run a very fine line. They can go very, very well, and they can go very, very wrong. But that's the magic of Lupin, I guess.
Yeah,
that things just
Hermione does perfectly until the Boggart. How do we say it?
I said boggart, but the pronunciation is up in the air. Yeah.
Hermione's, though, I love to see the visualization of the fear of failure.
Her boggart is McGonagall.
Saying that she's failed everything.
Kinda. It's McGonagall, kinda. Which is interesting.
Well, because like in that chapter, you guys had talked about how, I forget who was your guest at the time, but you guys talked about, like, how do you visualize something that's not, like...
Julie talked about that.
Yeah, like how not just, like, a spider is easy to picture or a banshee or whatever, but something that's not tangible, like, being abandoned or failing or never being loved or like
being
those
out in the
types of
ocean
things.
Or like
heights like those types of things.
Yeah.
Like, how do you visualize it? And me, I am definitely one of the people who fear failure and feeling stupid. So, like, having this visualization of it was like, for me, for young Elizabeth, when she first read this book, it was like, oh, that's how it comes across.
To be fair to Hermione, that's perfect timing for this particular issue, because she's just done final exams and she hasn't necessarily gotten grades yet.
She's had more exams than anybody else.
And she hasn't gotten grades back yet.
Yeah.
So if she sees McGonagall and she says, oh, you failed this.
Yeah.
That hits deeper, because you can't logic yourself out of that. That could be real.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's an interesting timing, and the whole thing was an interesting use.
As they're coming away from Lupin's, that's where they see Fudge. And he says he's here for, the hippogriff situation, and they see the executioner. And Ron is like, you might not have an execution. They got the axe ready. This isn't justice. And Hermione's like, your dad works for the ministry. You can't just go saying things like that to his boss. Like, you could get your father in trouble. And as long as we argue the case well, then they can't possibly execute Buckbeak, ... And Harry's like, he can tell that Hermione doesn't believe what she's saying. And I think this is one of those times when you're young and you're reading this and you're still experiencing the world, that you're faced with the fact that justice doesn't always prevail. You know, like there are some unjust things that occur in the world, and even if all evidence points to like it should go this way, but it doesn't always. Things aren't always black and white. Things aren't always good versus evil, but it's still worth fighting for.
So there's a lot going on with this Buckbeak case. Mm-hmm. Yes, you have. You're led to believe in this book. Malfoy's putting pressure. Malfoy's Lucius is essentially controlling this entire thing.
Right. Everyone's in this pocket.
And I'm not saying that's not true. I am very much not saying that. But from the outside looking in, hippogriffs are large, aggressive animals that have been known to do damage to witches and wizards.
Insult them.
Still. And I love that Hermione and Ron are looking up all these cases of hippogriff law. Well, guess what? There's all of these examples of hippogriff law because they've been involved in a lot of law cases. So if you're looking at it, and I get the 13-year-old logic of like, we'll do this. That's great. You're not lawyers. You're not like, you don't really know the intricacies of this stuff.
But for them, just seeing the fact that there's an executioner there who's literally stroking his axe, like, this is the best thing ever.
Sure, bringing the executioner to the appeal is ridiculous in every possible way. Mm-hmm. That's fair.
But yes, then they go to divination, and that is the final. Before
we go on there, I to lighten the mood on the injustice of it all.
Yeah.
The thing that stuck out to me about that interaction was their observations of, so old he is withering before our eyes. Great description. And then the second one, tall, strapping, with a black thin mustache. And I'm like, Zorro? Why did you come? Why are you here, Zorro?
I hope when I'm old, 13-year-olds do not look at me and tell me how I appear to be withering before their eyes.
I will be. I will still be working at that point. I will be told that. But no, those were my two takeaways. Okay, now we can go to Trelawney's final.
I will say I enjoy how, like... Okay, so obviously her final is look into the crystal ball, like she said she was going to do, and see what you can see.
Yes.
And poor Neville is trying to cram before the final, and he's like, does anyone see anything in the balls? They're like, nah, no one's done it. So it's just kind of like, okay, well,
this goes back to my practical exam thing. Mm-hmm. To Trelawney's credit, all of the professors have done practical exams.
Right.
None of them have done written.
Right.
So,
well, other than history and magic, but like, how else could you do it?
Right. But other than that one, nobody else has done a written exam that we are aware of.
Right.
So even though Trelawney is aware, and as she says at the very beginning of her very first lesson, like, you either have this or you don't.
Right.
I feel like a practical lesson is a disaster waiting to happen.
You know, you just gave me an idea. Like, if I were to approach these exams, since, I mean, like, I understand, like, Lupin's had the best covering the whole year, but if you wanted it to be, okay, so let's say Transfiguration, like, as long as there's a certain level of difficulty, and you could give choices, is what I'm trying to say very badly. But like, if there was like with divination of, okay, you could either try seeing in the crystal ball or the tea leaves.
I'd make it simpler.
You pick which one you want to do.
I'd make it even simpler than that. If you're charms or transfiguration or defense against the dark arts, you have a written and a practical. 50-50. Because that's fair and doable. Divination, if you have to have a practical and a written, I would do a practical and a written, and I would curve it. I would have like 75% of the test count for written.
Okay.
And like 25 for
the practical part.
Or some percentage thereof, because if I'm Trelawney and I'm looking at this, I know that most, if not all, will get for better like a 0 on the practical.
Because they're not seers.
Because they should probably get a 0 on the practical. So I would weight it.
Which also makes me wonder, yeah, because like with how she grades it now, like how do you grade this? Are you supposed to wait to see if the prediction comes true and then be like, okay, A+ to you and not for everyone else? You know, like,
I'm assuming she does it to her fault, but honestly, other than how I literally just explained it, I don't see her grading it any other way of just like, are you actually showing me that you have at least tried to grasp this subject? Are you making some sort of actual effort? Are you taking this somewhat seriously? And that's a subjective way of doing it, and it's a terrible way of doing it.
Right.
But other than that, I don't know how you would do this.
I think her way of grading it tends to be more of, which possibly is the bias of seeing it through Harry's eyes, but the more gruesome it is, the more horrific it is, the more interested she's in on it, and then the better grade you get.
I will say this, and as an English teacher, I think I've probably told you this story.
Okay.
But let's be real about it for just a second. When we were in school, and I can point to one teacher particularly that I remember doing this for. He was an English teacher. It was my Brit Lit class, my senior year. And he gave us this assignment. And we figured out at some point.
Oh, I do know this story, yeah.
That if we wrote about like something nerdy, let's say, he would grade up for it. Didn't necessarily have to be better than someone else's, but just the topic matter alone would boost my grade a little bit. So we leaned into it, and we started doing that, and we leaned towards that teacher's preferences, and we got better grades for it.
You know what's funny?
It's not an unreal thing.
I've done that too in college. I had an English professor who, well, let's just say that she was more interested in stories that got a little more X-rated, which was interesting. And so if you wrote your papers, you always made to bring up that certain topic, and feminist ideas. She was also would push those, so you do that too. But I don't know. I think like her way of looking into it.
Obviously, Trelawney's version is exaggerated from what we're saying.
Right.
But it's also a book. So kind of has to be.
Well, I just think it's funny, like with Harry, he says hippogriff, and she's like, ooh, okay, well, you know, does he appear to have his head? No shadowy figure raising an axe behind it, writhing on the ground, no blood, no weeping Hagrid. And he's just like, no, it's fine. It's flying. Oh, okay, guess you did your best. Like, she clearly wants the drama, and that's been her thing this entire series.
Also, I mean, let's be real. If we're predicting what's about to happen to that hippogriff,
it's more accurate. But then that makes me wonder, like, okay, well, how is she going to grade it? Is she going to wait to see until the end of the day? Does Buckbeak live or die?
No, I think maybe. I mean, she could do that, I guess. But if I were her, I would probably, that's not a 0. I'd probably give it a barely passing. That's probably how I'd grade it if I were her.
Yeah.
Clearly you weren't doing it, but I give you props for at least, like, trying to put a real, like, spin on it.
Yeah.
Like a real possible thing.
Anyway. At least Harry did that. I think Ron didn't. He said he just made stuff up.
Which he can see through that.
Right. Which at least Harry's, it's related to something that's going on right now. But I do like her telling everybody, you know, don't tell anybody else what you saw, because bad things will happen. Dun, dun, dun.
So we're running long, but we still have to get to the actual title of this chapter, which is
her prediction.
Professor Trelawney's prediction.
I will say I do enjoy the plot device of having Trelawney suddenly go out of alphabetical order in terms of seeing the students, so that Harry can be the last one to see, because Ron went before. Weasley went before Potter in this case.
I'm just going to throw this bomb into here, and I'm just going to throw it and watch whatever comes out of it. Mm-hmm. What if, when she saw that she had to do crystal ball reading, Harry had to be the last one?
I highly doubt that.
What if she did look in a crystal ball and was like, I have to do a crystal ball reading for the final, and Harry has to come last? You don't know why. You don't know for what reason, but you've seen that has to happen.
As a teacher, I would say Keep it in alphabetical order. It makes it easier to grade.
But if the world is telling you, no, it has to be this way, do it this way, you have to do it that way.
Not necessarily.
Then everything goes wrong. Then this prediction doesn't get made. I'm throwing the bomb out there of like, maybe she really wasn't lying to Hermione's dismay, and this is the way it had to be.
I think this is just J.K. Rowling making it so that Harry's last. Hence me saying it's the plot device, which I enjoy.
So I get the plot device thing.
You're trying to just make it make sense.
You're looking me in the eye right now and saying that there is 0% chance that that's a possibility. 0%.
1%.
Oh. It's ridiculous. All right.
Do you want to know what the actual prediction says?
Yes, let's get to the actual prediction.
So I do like with the whole, when she goes into prophecy mode, she has a loud, harsh voice. She goes rigid in her chair. Her eyes are unfocused. Her mouth sags. And Harry says it looks like she's having like a seizure, which I thought was interesting. But she says it will happen tonight. The Dark Lord lies alone and friendless, abandoned by his followers. His servant has been chained these 12 years. Tonight, before midnight, the servant will break free and set out to rejoin his master. The Dark Lord will rise again with his servant's aid, greater and more terrible than ever he was. Tonight, before midnight, the servant will set out to rejoin his master. And then her head slumps forward, and she comes out of it, and she's like, whoo, the heat of the day, I drifted off. No idea what she just said.
Yeah. But that's how that works. We've gotten the glimpse of what a true seer and a true prediction looks like.
Yeah.
That's what it is. So, and it clearly, as you mentioned with the description, it's a hard change. Mm-hmm. There's no mistaking that. There's no going around it. It's a hard shift in character and personality. Mm-hmm. No mistaking what's going on.
But, of course, Harry is like...
Harry doesn't know what's going on.
I don't know, because he's like, was that a real prediction, or was that just her idea of an impressive end to a test? And this kind of goes back to the whole, like, if she hadn't spent all year trying to impress them, then Harry wouldn't be thinking, oh, maybe she's just being impressive still, or she's being weird. I mean, she's always weird, so maybe it's just weirdness, but maybe it's a prediction. Who knows?
That's Harry being particularly obtuse, to use a word there. I think this is a clear...
third year thing?
Yeah, this is clearly... he has spent a whole year with this lady. Right. Never once has she ever gone into this different type of trance.
Right.
Clearly.
Well, yeah, clearly.
Something
and
is
when
different.
he tells her exactly
and this is specifics.
He tells her exactly what she just said. She's like, I wouldn't predict anything that far-fetched. Like, so, yeah, I mean, like, there's a little bit of doubt, but I do enjoy he goes over to Ron and Hermione to tell them what just happened. And because there's the news that Buckbeak lost, that becomes the focus. And they never go back to the whole Trelawney prediction, which once again, like this is one of those things.
They choose when to be nosy and when not to be.
Yeah, and it's just like, you're not going to forget your professor potentially having a seizure and making predictions and not about just the Dark Lord.
It's the prediction about the Dark Lord.
Like, you're not going to let that go just because a creature might be dying soon. So,
right.
I don't know.
This does... The thing... We're going way long in this non-spoiler. I apologize. But the thing that I really want to get to about this prediction. The prediction... says the servant will return to the Dark Lord.
Mm-hmm. He's been chained these 12 years.
Right. That's a true prediction from a true seer. Mm-hmm. That being said, it's still up in the air as to how to interpret that. Mm-hmm. You're looking at a crystal ball, and you're seeing a big black dog in the crystal ball, or the tea leaves, or whichever prediction you're saying Trelawney should interpret. She's seeing what she thinks is a Grimm. Mm-hmm. It looks like the quote-unquote textbook version of a Grimm.
Yeah.
It just so happens that it's the big black dog that Harry's been seeing. Mm-hmm. So you're seeing something, and it's real, could still be misinterpreted.
Yeah,
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
But yes, we can get back to it in the spoilers.
Okay.
But I just find it interesting. So, really quick, the trio gets down to Hagrid's hut.
Yeah.
And, Hagrid's like, you shouldn't be here, trying to kick him out.
I mean, he's a mess, though. He can barely take care of himself.
Sure. He's saying he's got Buckbeak out back because trying to enjoy the fresh air and all of the things before the incident happens. Mm-hmm. And Hermione's trying to calm him down and opens up a jar or a container.
She's making tea.
And inside is a familiar rat.
It's Scabbers. And he's not happy to be found.
No, particularly not by those individuals. He seems particularly adverse to being anywhere near Ron.
Yeah, I mean, Ron is trying his very, very best to hold on to him. He's like, he won't stay still. He bit him. He's just, going crazy. And as they leave the hut, they hear the jumble of indistinct male voices, a silence, and then without warning, the unmistakable swish and thud of an axe. And it ends the chapter on that.
Yeah. It's a good cliffhanger of she does that.
Yeah.
I have questions about Scabbers, which we can also get into the spoilers.
Let's do that then.
Because it's already been a long time in the non-spoilers, so we will be right back with our spoiler section. So stick with us.
You foul, loathsome, evil little cockroach!
All right, so we are back with the spoiler section, and we're going to dive right back into the Trelawney prediction conversation, because I brought up the idea of, even though a prediction or a prophecy may be 100% right, it's still up for debate as to the interpretation, and it could be different from person to person. And I brought up the Grim and the Crystal Ball from last week's chapter. And in this particular instance, one could assume that could be Sirius Black that she's referring to. Right, and Harry wouldn't necessarily know one way or the other who's supposed to go reunite with Voldemort. Right. So Harry could interpret this as Sirius Black. We know, having read the books, and this is the spoiler section, it's actually Peter Pettigrew. It's actually Scabbers. So I guess my whole point in bringing that up is Trelawney makes a lot of predictions. And she says she sees things in tea leaves. She sees things in crystal balls. And people throw that away as like, she's making it up. Is she? She might not be interpreting it all that correctly, necessarily. She's seeing, just interpreting it differently. I think this goes back to what I originally said with Talons and Tea Leaves about the differences between prophecies and predictions. Because this is, according to Dumbledore, her second prophecy that she's made. That we know of. But she's made a lot of predictions. And again, I wonder if her prophecies, if she is like specific to Voldemort type ones, because those two that she's made have been about the Dark Lord. I think, to your point right there, I think she might be triggered by massive events, which those two would be surrounding massive events, his downfall and his rise. So. But I mean, like, Dumbledore has said before how, like, Trelawney could be a danger to herself and just doesn't realize it. If people were to realize that she's made these predictions, these prophecies about Voldemort. Oh, people will come after her. Exactly. So it makes me again wonder, like, if seers specifically see big events regarding, like, specifics. Here's the question I have for you. And I'm interested in your answer. I'm very intrigued. Oh, God, I'm sure. So her seeing a Grim in the tea leaves in the cup. Prediction or seeing? I'm putting you on the spot. I guess I'm questioning what you mean by seeing. Is seeing like what she just did right here? Like prophecy? Seeing to me would be like you're reading these tea leaves, which is a form of divination. Crystal ball is a form of divination.
So like capital S seeing.
Yes. So she has, quote unquote, the sight, looks into these tea leaves, which is a form of divining the future, sees a grim-like figure. That's real because she's just interpreting it wrong.
So then what would you define predicting?
Predicting, I would count more as like the Neville breaking the teacup thing. That's targeted guessing predictions. Or
I don't know if I fully...
Unless we know that she saw in a crystal ball or the flames or whatever of Hermione leaving around Easter, that would also be a prediction of like a student will probably leave around Easter. But like in the crystal ball, if you see a Grim, if you see a large black dog, that's what the smoke in the crystal ball is telling you. You're seeing that. You're just interpreting it differently. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I don't know if I agree with your definitions. The way I would take it would be more like what she just did for Harry was seen with a capital S. She's done that officially that we know of twice. Prophecies use the full sight. The inner eye is open. I think having an inner eye allows her to see with like a lowercase s, where she can look into the crystal ball, she can see stuff, then she interprets it correctly or incorrectly, regardless. I think that is like what she used to determine someone's going to be leaving at Easter, or someone, Lavender's going to get bad news, Neville maybe is breaking his cup, maybe that's in that level, or maybe that's even a lower level of just using common sense. But I think, like, because she has the inner eye, she can do better with looking into the crystal ball, looking at your palms, looking into the tea leaves, and actually identifying stuff. And then, yes, has to interpret one way or the other. But seeing capital S is what she uses when the inner eye is completely open. And that's when prophecy mode takes over.
I would disagree. I think seeing something in tea leaves or a crystal ball is still capital S. It's just not a prophecy. You're seeing things, you're interpreting things, you're divining what is happening or what will happen. Whereas the other stuff would be more predictions. I think it's just what type of seeing are you doing, but you're still seeing capital S. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I disagree with you.
Shocking. I'm standing alone on a hill by myself on every Trelawney thought I've ever had. Let us know.
I'm not saying that she's not skilled. She clearly does have the skill. But I think that her prophecies is when she's being a real seer.
I think that's what she's defined by. But I don't think that's the completeness of it. It's an aspect of it. Let us know. Let us know what you think. What seeing with a capital S is and what it involves. Clearly we disagree. So let us know what you think. Hit us up on Twitter and Instagram and just let us know. What else did we want to get to in the spoiler section?
Well, what I will say with the vagueness of her prophecy or whatever, like you're right, that because it's not specific and it can be interpreted.
Well, it's vague and it's specific at the same time.
Exactly. And it's like with the whole book, like this is probably my favorite version of time travel that is portrayed. Because I mean, like pretty much everything eventually gets to time travel. Like let's just be real. If something goes long enough, they're going to include time travel. But with this, I think it works because, I mean, one, the kids don't know what the outcome is. Because they don't actually witness Buckbeak's execution, then they've just assumed he's dead. They don't see it. And if they did time travel to try to like reverse it, then I don't think that would be able to work. I think we'd bump into like a time paradox kind of a thing. So they are like the only one. Dumbledore is the only one who could arrange this because he is aware of the Time Turner being in the school. He's aware of Buckbeak, being executed, but he's also aware that like this can be fixed and injustice can be, avoided or changed or whatever. But because it's all so vague with this prophecy and because Harry hasn't brought it to Dumbledore's attention yet, because he's not exactly on the whole one-on-one, let's have chats on a daily basis mode just yet, like, I think that vagueness is what is able to make it come true. And because I'm an English teacher, I'm reminded of, like, Macbeth. Like, there's the prophecies in there that Macbeth is going to become not just like a higher title, but he's going to become king. And the higher title one just happens because it's supposed to happen before he's even told it's going to happen. So it's not really a prediction. But the idea of becoming king, he's like, well, is this just going to fall into my lap or do I need to make it come true? And of course, spoiler alert for Macbeth, he kills a lot in order to make it come true. So with this being so vague, it's not necessarily like they're trying to make the future come true. So many tiny insignificant details have to align perfectly in order to make the future happen. And that's why real prophecies are so rare. I mean, if Hermione hadn't gotten the cloak, then they wouldn't have gone down to Hagrid's hut. They wouldn't have been there to find Scabbers. And if they hadn't found Scabbers, then, like, who knows? So many things that make this prophecy come true would not have happened. And, I mean, Harry eventually later on, comments on that with Dumbledore. And he's like, yeah, that's why divination, it's such a tricky subject. The future is so...
It's always moving.
Right. And for it to become aligned the way it does is just like, ooh, that's why I like it so much.
It's always moving, but it's that argument of like fate almost. Mm-hmm. It's like no matter what you do or which route you end up taking, you'll ultimately end here.
Right.
So that's kind of what a prophecy is, except this is also, like I said, it's vague, except if you know it. If you know the answer, it's actually extremely specific.
Right. I mean, she specifies, Voldemort's been alone and friendless. We know that. He's been abandoned, right, because everyone thinks he's dead. His servant, Pettigrew, has been chained these 12 years. He's been living with the Weasleys. He's too afraid to, leave them and be outed as a traitor to brought the downfall to Voldemort or something like that. But he's going to break free. He's going to rejoin them. He's going to rise again with his servant's aid. We know Pettigrew donates, kind of, his hand. He's going to be greater and more terrible than ever before.
So that's the thing. If you're Harry, and I know that stuff happens right after this, but you'd have to have the thought or the fear that runs through you that it's like, if this is a true prophecy, and she's making like a real one, that's alarming because it would theoretically come true, and she's talking about the Dark Lord rising again. Right.
And I think, too, just because it happens so quickly, that's part of why it's like, wait, what did I just hear? The Dark Lord? He's gonna rise again, and the servant's gonna join in? Like, it's such a quick thing, and to really process it takes time. And like you said, he doesn't have the time to process it right now. But we know his own prediction later on. He has to go through that, like, line by line with Dumbledore. Like, what does this mean? Tell me. And please, like, interpret this for me because this is my life on the line. This is the Dark Lord rising again. It's a very scary thing. Which he just can't process right now. So it's interesting when we do get to see it come true and be like, oh, look how the future aligns itself.
The point is, the area of divination is tricky. Mm-hmm. It's not all straightforward. Mm-hmm. It's real. Yeah. It is a thing. Yeah. Whether people like it or not, it is a thing. and it is clearly a factor in this whole series. So, plays a big role. And Trelawney, whether you like her or not, plays a big role in this series. So,
Well, I know they tried to cut her out of the movies because they didn't like her, and they were like, "No, we gotta have Trelawney. It's kind of a big deal."
So before we get too long in the spoiler section, I did want to go back to Scabbers. Mm-hmm. Okay, here's my thing about Scabbers. Where has he been all this time? And for what purpose is he in Hagrid's hut?
Well, I know he fled. He knows Sirius is after him because Sirius knows his disguise.
Fine. We're talking like a couple of months here have passed, yeah?
Have they been months? When did
It's been at least weeks.
When did Ron
at
get
the
attacked?
very least weeks?
Because I feel when Sirius broke into the Gryffindor Tower, Peter alone realized he's after me. So that's probably when he fled. And then...
Even though you're a small rat, you're not taking weeks to get out of a camp.
I mean, he would probably want to be maybe he was like in the kitchen so he could still be fed.
Maybe. Dungeons? Get away from...
pretty much he has to avoid Mrs. Norris.
Yeah.
And the big black dog and Crookshanks.
But then he ends up... Like, what journey has he been on that he's been running for whatever you want? Even days. Days, weeks, months, whatever.
Yeah.
But he's been on the run after being attacked, and he ends up in Hagrid's hut.
Now, this is a stretch, and I don't fully believe it myself, but do you think he was in Hagrid's hut because he knew there was going to be, like, outsiders from the ministry there? Like someone I could escape, but like clearly Hogwarts right now is not a safe place. So if I snuck my way into Fudge's bag or something and it was like,
that's
take
a stretch.
It away. That's what I'm saying. It's a bit of a stretch, but
I'm not giving Pettigrew that. I'm not giving him that.
Yeah. Just there to hear like Fudge, like what Fudge has to say, if there's any news of something.
I don't know. Cause how do you hear that?
Or maybe it's just because Hagrid will take care of any living creature that he comes across.
And I'm not even saying like the purpose of Pettigrew being a rat is multifaceted. It's yes to get the thing on the Whomping Willow, the knot on the Whomping Willow.
Right.
But also it's for espionage.
Right.
Like it's to hide in plain sight.
Right, he's a rat.
Yeah. So he can hear things. But then to hear things, you still have to be in the spot to hear it. And that's a lot of things lining up appropriately.
We know Dumbledore goes and visits Hagrid. Maybe he thinks Dumbledore will have something interesting to listen to. I don't know.
My point is, like, this is awfully random to find Scabbers. And it's like, what has he been doing?
Especially since he knows that Ron, Harry, and Hermione visit all the time.
I don't know. I just caught it. This read. This is the only read I've ever thought that. But I'm just like, what? Like, why? But I don't know. Anyway, do we have anything else on the spoiler front?
So lucky Dumbledore came down. Because Dumbledore, like... I mean, he made, the chapter of Hermione's secret be able to become a thing. He delays them enough. He draws their attention to certain things. It's just like, once again, Dumbledore seeming to know more than he lets on, but can he? I don't know.
We'll talk more about it in upcoming chapters.
Yeah.
But, Dumbledore's Dumbledore. He's always got an ace up his proverbial cloak.
Maybe he's got a crystal ball. We have no idea.
Maybe his secret talent is actually divination. Who knows? Anyway, I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
So we will end it here. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Let us know, again, thoughts on Trelawney, thoughts on her prediction, thoughts on seeing what exactly qualifies as seeing capital S or not. Let us know. Give us your feedback. It's been great to hear from all of you who have been listening and interacting on Twitter and Instagram, so we're thankful for that. For Elizabeth, I'm Dan. Thanks for listening. Thank you for listening to Hogwarts, a podcast. If you like what you've heard, please click the subscribe button on your preferred podcasting app and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Hogwarts a Pod.